Then celebrate the Festival of Weeks to the Lord your God by giving a freewill offering in proportion to the blessings the Lord your God has given you. And rejoice before the Lord your God at the place he will choose as a dwelling for his name. You, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, the Levites in your towns, and the foreigners, the fatherless and the widows living among you. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and follow carefully these decrees.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
I have something to show you guys. That is new pants. And I don't have it fitted yet. Yeah, coming just in time for football season. I asked if I wore it today, would it be blessed, so that the 0-12 season would turn into something different. So we'll see. I don't know. We're just gonna kind of leave it right there. Maybe soak up some of the holiness for today. Well, it's great to be with you again. If you probably noticed, but you guys have brought me back to Atlanta today with the heat. So I want to welcome all those joining us online and welcoming those that watch this later. If you're feeling a little a little sweaty at home, a little hot, it's because it's hot in here. Just so you know. You see people waving around. We're back in the south today, guys. I don't know if you do that, but we'll have some sweet tea later. I even brought the little sweat towel thing going on here just in case. So we'll see if I can bust that out. But many of you know that if you haven't been with us, I claim I'm from Atlanta. I wasn't born there, but I spent all my life there. So I can preach in the heat now, so watch out. But we're going to be checking, of course, on the AC unit this week. Something went wrong with it, so we'll, of course, check on that. So if you're visiting with us the first time, we do have AC, just not today. So come back and see it sometime. We'll appreciate that. Let us pray together. Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be pleasing in your sight. The Lord, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. Well, if you're visiting with us today, or if you haven't been with us, I just want to catch you up real quick. We are in a sermon series, and we're in the second message of a sermon series, and that is called Festivus for the Rest of Us. And if you weren't with us, if you were a Seinfeld fan of the late 90s, kind of like Seinfeld era, it comes from that, right? And there's a funny episode, we talked about it last week, so we won't rehash it again here today. But if you're interested, go on YouTube, type in Festivus for the Rest of Us, Seinfeld. You'll find out why this is called that. And what we've been doing is been looking at, what we will be doing also too, is we'll be looking at the different festivals of the ancient Israelites. And you say, Pastor, why? It was the ancient Israelites, and that's what they did. Because there's actually some good stuff for us to learn today. And we looked at last week, we started with maybe the most famous and the one you're probably the most familiar with, which is the Passover, which again is that critical, important meal that they would eat together to commemorate the flight from Egypt, also God's work at freeing the Israelites from bondage and slavery in Egypt. And we've looked at how Jesus took that meal and actually transformed it into what we celebrate every first and second Sunday here at this church in communion. And how God speaks to us through that, talking to us about delivery and who we become, and how God has transformed us into a people that were in bondage and someone new. Today, we're going to be looking at yet another one of the festivals. This one is probably a little less familiar to you unless you're, just reading the Bible all the time, and specifically reading Leviticus and Deuteronomy all the time. You may not be familiar with it, but when I actually explain it a little bit, you're going to be very familiar with it in some ways. And so as we're here today, I wanted us to look at that. As you've heard our reading today, it's a celebration called the Feast of Weeks. And you say, well, that's an interesting name. It is. And there's going to be a reason why it's called that, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. But I first wanted to point our attention. If you brought your Bible here today, I want you to open it up. If you brought your phone, welcome to get it out, look it up online. And we're going to go back to Leviticus. And say, woo, pumped up, excited. I always wondered, if I'd ever be part of a church, I'd say, hey, turn your Bibles to Leviticus, and I'd hear an audible, yes! Right? I'm still waiting for that day to happen yet, at 8 years of ministry, so maybe one day I'll be surprised. But we're going to open up and turn to Leviticus at chapter 23. And the reason why we kind of hesitate with Leviticus is because it seems so foreign in the first place. There's no story to it. It's all about explanation of God saying, okay, Israelites, I called you out of Egypt, wandering in the wilderness, and you're about to enter the promised land. Here's what I want you to do to be my people. here are all the precepts I have for you. Here's the way I want you to worship. Here's the way I want you to be holy. Here's how I want you to be different than the nations, so that when people see you, they know that you are different. And I want you to proclaim my glory to other nations, and I want them to understand, hey, your God is amazing. We want to be part of your people and become part of you. And so that was God's plan. And so he's laying out all sorts of different things. But part of it was there's certain festivals that happen during the year. And each festival happened for a reason. There was a reason behind it, a purpose behind it, for the people to learn how do we worship God, how do we go about our daily life, how does God even want us to think about time and who we are and things like that. And so in chapter 23, they lay out 7. Now if that number sounds like a good number, it's like the holy number, 7. For ancient Israelites, 7 is the big number. If you have 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, it's like 7 is the best thing ever. It's the holy number. It's a perfect number. It's God's number. So for instance, on what day of the week did the people rest? On Sabbath. The 7th day, right? And what day was the day that God rested in creation in the story of Genesis, right? On the 7th day, right? And then there's also things like on every 7th year, there was a year of Jubilee, where the crops and stuff, the land was supposed to lie fertile, and the people were supposed to set free prisoners and give land back if they had bought it from certain families and give it back. 7 was this big, big number. And so the fact that there's 7 festivals is not an accident. God wanted people to understand, this is the perfect year, right? This is the way I want you to worship, the way I want you to do this. And so the people did these things. And when you look at chapter 23, I'm just going to kind of skim through it together if you have your Bibles. It starts off with the Sabbath. Now, it's not technically a festival, but I love that God threw this in. Because he wanted the people to remember, hey, don't forget, every week, I want you to rest. Every week, I want you to stop from your work, and I want you to rest. When you think about people that were slaves, that worked every day, every hour, worked their fingers to the bone, so to speak, were just in horrible living conditions. And God said, I want you to rest on that day. You know that every single time they rested, they remembered God's work in their life, didn't they? And they had nothing to do but to be thankful and grateful those days to remember that. And so God tells them, hey, every week, rest. And then there's the Passover and the unleavened bread. That's technically 2, but they're so closely in time together that they go ahead and add it as one kind of here. So there's two that happen right here. The festival of Passover and unleavened bread. We talked about that last week. Then there's the first fruits. And you say, what is the first fruits? It's exactly what you might think of it. It was the very first of the crop. You take it and you cut it down, and God wanted them to celebrate it a certain way. It's written right there, but I'll kind of just give you the highlights of it. It was, you're going to take the first sheaf of the harvest, right? Now, it's going to sound very familiar in just a minute, so just keep that in mind. First sheaf of the harvest. You're going to cut it down, you're going to wave it before the Lord as an offering. You're then going to take a burnt offering, which was normally a lamb. You're going to take a grain offering. You're going to take fine flour. Why? Because you just started harvesting, so it's the very first of that fine flour for the year. You're going to mix it with other crop-type things like oil and wine, and you're going to offer them before the Lord. And it specifically says, do not eat any of the grain offering until you present this. So you see what God's trying to teach the people, don't you? Right? It's not just about remember this, but hey, remember where it comes from. Remember all your blessings of your life. Where does it come from? This festival right here, it's kind of like Thanksgiving, if you know. Thanksgiving, you stop time and celebrate the harvest coming through. You get together with family and friends and you celebrate together. But there was not only that, there was not only the first fruits, but there was, after that, called the Feast of Weeks. So this is actually counting, this is the 4th of the 7. So we're getting at the Passover, the unleavened bread, the first fruits, and then what we're talking about today, the Feast of Weeks. Now, if you haven't noticed in Deuteronomy, there's only 3 of the festivals mentioned that Deuteronomy wants to remind the people of, even though there's 7 in Leviticus. And I always find it interesting with 3. Because if you were, even as a theologian that studied Israel, if you went back and told me, hey, pick 3 of these 7, I wouldn't have picked this one. And it was so critically important for the Israelites that Deuteronomy wanted them to remember it again. I want you to celebrate this. Remember the Passover? Remember the Feast of Weeks. Now here's why it was called that. It's called the Feast of Weeks because From the time of that first fruit offering, God wanted them to count out 49 days, which is what? 7 times what? 7. Number familiar, right? So holy, holy times 2 holy, right? So you get holy times holy, you get 49, and then they just added a day to make it 50, right? So you get actually 50 days. So that's why it's the Feast of Weeks that happens after that first fruits. And see if this sounds familiar. They would offer the new grain to God. But they would do it in loaf form, actually bread form, that is. They would take it, they would bake it, do all these different things. They would offer 7 lambs, a bull, 2 rams. So there was much more an offering. There was even a goat that was offered for sin. There were 2 lambs that were offered for fellowship offerings. And they were specifically told, don't do regular work today. So in that first fruits, you were supposed to just kind of go about your day and you celebrate it. But Feast of Weeks, no. You can do some work, but not the regular work. Right? And so they were told to rest. And then they were told to do this. When you reap the field, and when you're taking a sickle or you're going through, I want you to do these 2 specific things. First of all, leave the edges. Don't touch them. Leave them there. And the second thing is this, is when you would harvest back then, you would take your sickle and you would knock it and cut it. And you would, of course, bundle it. It would be kind of bundled together. People would come by and tie it up. Then you put it on a cart and would then take it back to the threshing floor. Well, what would happen was eventually stuff would either fall off the cart, or there would be, as you're just going through, you'd miss certain stalks or you'd miss certain things. And what they would call that was gleaning. And you went back forward again to find all the stuff you missed. And God said, don't do it. When you harvest, don't do it. Leave it. And here's what I want to happen. The people in your land, the poor, the people in your land that are the aliens, the foreigners, so to speak, the people that don't belong to you, but are living amongst you, that don't have guilds and things that they can be part of, allow them to come in to reap the edges and glean the fields. Now, it's pretty crazy, isn't it, to think about that. Now, you're starting to think, well, wait a minute. Didn't they do the harvest the first time? So if they're harvesting again, how are they harvesting? And the reason for that is pretty simple. It's actually, the first harvest was barley in the feast of the first fruits. And the second harvest was wheat. And you can tell by this which one the Israelites thought was a better thing, which one God thought was more important. It was wheat. So if you're here today and you're a craft beer drinker, right, and you're used to drinking a lot of your barley hops and stuff like that, guess what? You're not as holy as you wheat beer drinkers. So congratulations to you wheat beer drinkers, you guys are more holy. So you didn't know that. That's why it tastes better, right? That's why. And somebody could look at like, oh, I know what you're talking about. There's the brewery right down here, guys. I know some of you. And so, but anyways, if that's why you're wondering why wheat beer must taste so good, that must be why. But they would take another thing, Rod, was and why wheat was so important was because it made much better bread, which was their staple food that they ate every single day. And remember what God said in the Feast of Weeks, not to bring a sheaf. No. Bring a baked loaf. Present it for the Lord. God wanted them to remember this. Now you're sitting here and you're thinking, wait a minute. So you're going to have 9 weeks from barley, which was actually March, April, kind of when they would start harvesting it the first time of it. And then you would get into like later May when actually would harvest the wheat. If you count 49 days, and that extra day, 50 days, you get 50, right? In the one I said that wrong. If you count 49 plus 1, you get 50. That's what I was trying to say. The Greek word for 50 is derived, and you just amalgamate it, you get Pentecost. Does that sound familiar? Remember in the New Testament, it was the day of Pentecost that the Holy Spirit came down among the church. Came down, I wasn't even the church yet. Came down among the disciples that were hiding pretty much and empowered them to go out to speak in tongues of all different nations and to what? Bring a harvest of people. And the church started, and God started bringing in souls and saying, you are now my people from all nations, all people, all places of the earth. You are mine. And God started the harvest. And God specifically chose that day to do it, this festival, if you will, of the Feast of Weeks. It was also known as Pentecost. And you ask, well, what was the reason? And the first reason of the first fruits, that first festival, was gratitude. It was, God, you provide for us. We just want to give you thanks. The second one, guess what? Was gratitude. So if you think about the ancient Israelites, they had 2 Thanksgivings, 50 days apart from each other pretty much, every year at the barley harvest when it started, and also when the wheat harvest started. Maybe just pause and think about that for a minute. There's some interesting things. Back then, they would think of barley and wheat. It was kind of like this. If you like football, you got some football fans? Oh, okay. There's 2 in here, so thank you to 2 people. You'll enjoy this analogy. The rest of you can have a nice nap for a few minutes. But as a football, right? When you're watching football and your team's on the field, and I'll let you just kind of interpret your team for a minute, even though we all know everybody in here, you got the scarlet and gray. I hear you boo, so I thought someone might do that, but no. Scarlet and gray, so you guys are cool. All right, so you got scarlet and gray on the field, right? And they're marching down the field. You know that first quarter when they, first drive, you're so excited, and then they kick a field goal, and you're kind of like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a part that's like, well, it's good, but really wanted this, the touchdown, we want to put the hands up and go about it. Well, that's how barley was, kind of like in the sense, right? You had the first holiday, and barley was the 3-pointer, right? But when you went down the field and you kicked you didn't kick the field goal, but you scored the touchdown, right? And what happens when you score a touchdown at the game ended, right? And I don't even know all the different songs, but different. I know when I went to see the Bengals, they have a touchdown song. I never experienced that as a Falcons fan growing up. I guess they didn't score a touchdown. Was the problem. I don't know. But, it was a touchdown song. I'm not sure if the Browns have a touchdown song. If they do, they haven't used it in a while. But when they score, right, there's a celebration there. Woo, touchdown! And the people you've never ever seen in your life before, you're at the game, that is, you're giving hugs, right? You're slapping each other. They're spilling beer on you, and you're like, yeah! Right? And no other situation in our context of our world does that happen. When someone spears beer there, even hugs you, do you feel like, okay, this is cool, right? But in that celebration, you do. Well, that's how they thought of the Feast of Weeks, right? It was this celebration of gratitude, of thankfulness. It was a harvest festival, but here's the key about it. It wasn't the end of the harvest. It was the beginning. And if you stop and think about that for a minute, it's a pretty powerful statement. Because it wasn't giving thanks to God for what God had provided. It was the trust that God was going to provide. Which is a big difference, isn't it? A really big difference. We think about Thanksgiving, of our own Thanksgiving. It's the end of our growing season. We bring the family around the table. We eat all the last of the harvest, pretty much, and all those harvest things. But the Israelites had this festival. It celebrated the beginning. It celebrated the fact that they were thankful for what was to come. It required, if you were going to be thankful for that, it required that it was going to be you trusting that God, it was going to come, weren't you? And it required that you had trust that whatever did come was going to be enough. And only that, it required, on the Feast of Weeks at least, not only a trust that there would be enough for you. Remember, you don't do the outside of the field, and you don't glean. You leave it for who? The poor and the alien. God's telling the people, if you're going to celebrate this festival, it requires that you have trust that there's enough not only for you, but even to give it away to those that need it. We think about these festivals as just kind of old things that don't really apply to us today. Yet, every moment of faith that we're called to walk with Jesus Christ has those elements, doesn't it? I almost think we should start our own new holiday, like pre-Thanksgiving. Right? Christmas just keeps moving into before, now it's like Easter when it's Christmas the next day, right? Maybe we should have a Thanksgiving. We should make Thanksgiving songs, right? And we should sing them, and then actually have a Thanksgiving in May, right? Prepare for Thanksgiving later, right? But nonetheless, it is true of the Christian life that you and I are called not only to give thanks after God answers the prayer, but to give thanks as we ask for prayer. And you and I are called not only to live faith in such a way, in our life in such a way, that not only do we have thankfulness for what we do have, but a trust that God is going to provide in the days ahead. Not only are we called to do that, we're required by God, that is, to trust and give thanks that whatever we're given is going to be enough. And then don't miss the last kicker of this one, the Feast of Weeks, this Pentecost. Not only are we called to trust that's enough for us, we're called to trust that whatever we get in our life is also enough to give to the poor, to give to the alien, so to speak, in our own context today. We're called to be a people different of the world. In those days, people worshiped gods, and pretty much they had no idea what the priests did. If you went to, for instance, if you were in Egypt, you would worship the gods, except you didn't do it. The priest did it for you. They were the professionals. That's what they did. And so you were only called once a year to gather around to have a festival at the temple courts kind of deal. But other than that, it was the priest's job to have a relationship with that God, keep those gods happy, and do those things. And then you got to go live your life as you wanted. And that's what for the Israelites, right? They were called, even though they had priests, they were called to be priests themselves. They were called to actually partake in the ceremonies. They were called to actually be part and understand what was happening. So God wants us to understand it too. And God is trying to reap a harvest here in Groveport. And God's Holy Spirit is trying to reap a harvest in your life. Not only your life, but the life of those you come across. We are in turn called to be thankful even before it happens. Let us pray. Lord, as we're gathered here today, we thank you for your word. And Lord, even in the scripture, we know that all of it is good. We have so many times we come, especially to the Old Testament, it's a people of ways that we don't understand, of values that are different than what maybe we have. And they were a people in a much different situation. And yet, Lord, you've called them to remember these things, to celebrate festivals. And each of those festivals taught something to their life. And God, even today, we admit it teaches us too. And so as we, your people, gather here today, we proclaim together that we are thankful, not only for what you have done in our life, we're thankful for what you will do. And today, Lord, we put our trust in you that not only that it will come, that it's going to be enough, and that it's going to be enough not only for us, but for others as well. So Lord, thank you for blessing us. And help us to bless others in the same way that you have blessed us and will bless us. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.